Hey, everybody. Welcome to World's Cup of Joe, Awaken Your Soul. We've got this question from one of your soul fam that we want to get deep on.
How do you know when to actively explore a trigger versus when you just say, that's mine, I'm soul, and let it be, without going deeper into what it's there? Do triggers always keep coming up if you don't go get to the root or to release them? Or can they naturally disappear by focusing solely on aligning with soul and not allowing yourself to give them any energy? Almost like vibrating out of alignment with triggers, moving up the scale of consciousness without having to intentionally process them. Is engaging in actively releasing blocks necessary for ascension process? It just feels like so much efforting to be constantly questioning where triggers are coming from and making through those energies. And isn't effort mind, not soul? This is a really, really good question. I would say when you get to a point where every moment is sacred and you can acknowledge each moment and you're as conscious as you can be, it's very easy to just be like, that's mine, that's soul, and get out of it, right? But then there's these like really deep rooted kind of triggers that hits you differently. And if you want to explore it, you can get into the root of that samskara, release it, and be deeper in your soul, right? So it's kind of like having your heart open and then closing it for specific situations and not getting into the root of it, and just keep reclosing your heart for those situations, hoping that they naturally open and solve themselves without you getting deep within them. So there's ways that you can do both. You can say, that's mine, I'm soul, and you get back into this present moment. But you're absolutely right. Triggers are triggers, and they are there for a reason to help you go within and to get deeper in them. So whether you like it or not, they will come back unless you really got deep in that trigger and finally released it and allow it to be experienced for what it is and recognize the lesson behind it. It will come back in different ways as often as it needs to until the lesson, the message, the teaching is recognized. I don't think I can avoid a trigger if, I tried to, and I don't want to. I love having these profound releases. I know the mind will always bring them in the forefront because it's easier to bring them to you. But when you're conscious throughout the day, all day, every day, those big triggers can actually be released just from meditation or a bath or just being present. So even if you don't consciously sit around and sit with every trigger, those things will naturally come about through you. But if you have the energy, time, and the inquiry to go within, I would say go for it, because there's something deep there that's ready to be released. And I love releasing. Like, if there's even a part of me that wants to cry, I want to know. If there's a part of me that hurts, I want to know. I stuffed so much emotions and energies inside me that has gotten part of my body, became part of my body, and I'm working on releasing them now. And I want to be an open vessel for source. I want to be an open energy transfer for beautiful souls that want soul right away. And if I'm stuffing down these lower scale energies that are keeping me from soul, things that are stuck because of things that happened in the past, my traumas, anything that happened, I'm keeping myself from opening my heart and allowing source to come through me. So I allow myself to be open wholeheartedly, and I allow myself to release whatever comes as an open vessel to source. And if that means I'm having a trigger, I'm going to sit with that trigger. I'm going to ugly cry it out. I'm going to release. And if I don't have time right now, which is okay, I know there's something there, but you know what? I'm driving or I got to go to an appointment. Let me explore that later when I'm home and I can meditate even deeper in it. So you can look at it both ways. You can face it, or just know if you continue to have presence, those things will get solved naturally. It will be revealed to you. You will just naturally experience the shift through that sadness or pain. For example, let's say a song, right? A song that reminds us of our people. It puts us in the floor and we're crying like crazy. And it's like, damn it, I don't want to hear this song for a while. Let me just focus on presence right now and just keep being. And next thing you know, you hear the same song and it doesn't touch you anymore. Well, it's going to be the same, right? It was a trigger for you before. And now that you've given yourself more presence and presence and presence, those things that used to trigger you are not going to hurt you as much as they used to, just from presence alone. So naturally, all of the things that used to bother us as we continue to reach our higher level of consciousness in the scale, those lower scales that used to make us jealous, that used to make us angry, because we're in neutrality now, we can just be like, oh, I remember when this used to be a trigger. And you can now watch them through soul. So I would say my triggers, the crazy ones where I have to ugly cry, are very few and rare in between. And I don't have as much of them anymore. Is it because I'm naturally aligning with soul and I'm present? Probably. But I'm also very conscious. And when I do have triggers, I face them. So I like to be an open heart kind of energy, again, open to source. I don't want to close myself out for anything, no matter what that experience is. And so when I have those tough conversations that I need to have with friends, family, even my person, I meet them because I don't want to close my heart out, because closing my heart out means I'm closing myself from the universe, from God, from my soul. What do you think, love?
So I love this question too. I think it's really, really good. So here's the reality of triggers and releasing emotion. Until you are at the point where anything and everything that comes at you from the external no longer sways you, then there's no efforting that needs to be done, and there's no having to get deep with the triggers. Unfortunately, that's going to be the very, 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 very elite few. And I know I'm nowhere near that, and I know most people are nowhere near that. Because think about it, once you're at this point, you're pretty much Buddha level, right? Where you can pretty much take anything that comes your way and you can see it through the eyes of neutrality. That is literally soul. So unless you're at that point, triggers are going to still need to be worked through and released at some point. Do you need to do them as soon as they happen? Absolutely not. And I would say, how do you gauge which ones you try to work through and which ones you just sort of say, okay, I'll worry about this later, I'm going to come back to soul. So for me personally, in the heat of the moment, if I'm fully in mind, that is not the time for me to work through my triggers. I actually try to just focus on being present at that time, because I want to raise my vibration, because I know that anything I do at that moment is going to be done through mind and through fear if I try to sit with it and try to release it. So I try to raise my vibration up to one where I'm more in acceptance of what's going on and I can now observe what's going on. Before then, I try to work through it. Because think about it, if you're in mind and you're in fear mode and you're trying to work through something, you're just bouncing around different negative, like lower scale energy. But if you can get to this point where you're observer, and then you could start, what's going on? Why is the mind upset? You can do it as the third party observer, and it's not going to be as painful. It's going to be a lot more baseline with your neutral energy. So that's sort of how I gauge which ones I'm going to work through at what time. I really do have to get myself into a higher vibration before I work through and release triggers. But that I really want to emphasize, there are going to be, because this journey is about releasing mind. It's about releasing those energies that have been kept and stored within us, that have kept us from peace, that have kept us from joy, that have kept us from this heart-opening experience that Joanne's talking about previously. We have sort of walked around with this closed heart because we're so in fear mode of everything, thinking that, there's going to be another the shoe to drop, right? That expression, there's going to be the other shoe to drop. And it's really hard for the mind to understand that we can just live harmoniously in peace every single day, but that requires a lot of work. And what does it also require? It requires us releasing the stuff that is not us, which are those low scale energies that have been shoved down for so long. And yes, that is the hard work of this journey. It is really, really hard. It was painful going down, and it's painful to release. Fortunately, the more and more you work on releasing them, the less and less painful it gets, and the less and less triggers in general you get. And when you're talking about the hard work of working through this stuff, this is the reality of triggers. If you don't work through it this time, usually your soul's going to find another way in another instance to bring you something very, very similar to reactivate that energy, because it's supposed to be released. It's supposed to be released, and the way to release them is through triggers. What you said, Joanne, going within, it's the form of, okay, how do I get to this point where it's gone? Well, I have to go within, and I have to figure out why it bothered the mind in the first place. So, love, the fact that you're asking this question is just so balanced. I really want you to know that. I'm so proud of this question because it's so self-focused, and it has so much love and peace energy attached to it. So I love your question. I just truly, they totally put me in a high vibe, soul, heart opening mode. So thank you.
Yeah, it does for me too, because it makes me recognize how powerful you are as an awakened soul to be conscious of the triggers, right? Like, just to ask this question just put you in this level of bring it, right? Bring it. What do you have, mind, right? I remember I had this moment where I just kept having triggers, and I mentioned it in the detox where I had to go to the restroom. And finally, I was like, bring it. What do you have for me, mind? I'm ready for you. And that's what you sound like right now, my love, where you're like, okay, how do I deal with triggers? Am I going to sit with them in the moment, or am I just going to be present and call them out? And I would say every single experience that resonates for you in each moment is going to resonate for you in each moment. The big, crazy triggers will find its way to keep coming back until you release them. And sometimes that's mine, I'm soul will work. That's what I'm saying, is sometimes you got to go deep. Sometimes, like, I can't really function.
Joanna, right, I'm soul, that's mine. That is, to me, that's what works to raise my vibration up to neutrality. So it's almost like that two-step that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get your energy up to a place that you can go deep within the triggers? Yeah. And
it might be needed to say that, even get deeper in the trigger. But what I'm saying is there comes a point where that won't work anymore with that really, really big trigger that's been trying to come out. Don't look for it. There's this really beautiful spiritual teacher that I was listening to, and she said, stop trying to listen to ways to pull traumas out. Like, just be present. Just be present, because you're still working with the mind. That is still, it's almost like psychology, right? How much more can we keep talking about the past over and over until we realize we're not the past? Let's just be present. And it's kind of the same thing. The way she mentioned it was, she was saying it's kind of like being in the bathtub, and every single time there's something like heavy from mine, think of it like it's like I know this is too much visual, but hey, she wanted her point to come across, and I think it'll help all of you guys. She said, think of it like it's like a cockroach crawling on you in your tub. And you're like, I'm going to ignore you, cockroach. I see you, but I'm going to ignore you. I'm going to just ignore that trigger there, and another one here, and another one here. And then finally you're smashed in a tub with a whole bunch of bugs, and you're like, okay, now I got to watch them. Let me watch you. Let me watch you. Let me watch you. Let me watch you. And then all the bugs go and release down the drain. And that's what she was saying was, you can't ignore them. So there's going to be a point where they're too much and unbearable to handle. But you don't want to sit around and asking for each bug to come out when you're peacefully taking a bath. There's a balance. There's a balance with handling the triggers. So if somebody said, hey, I sit around and like work with my traumas all day and I'm asking for all these bugs to come out, you're reactivating past energies that don't need to come out.
When people start saying like, I need healing, yeah, it's almost like you're trying to like pull out those cockroaches. That's what it, that's
Yes.
what, and
Like
when
you're
they're
broken or
naturally,
something.
yeah,
Yeah.
like when you're just being and you're focused on peace, yes, there's going to be times that these triggers come out, but what we tell clients all the time is they come out when you least expect them. You aren't looking for them.
Yes.
And that's the best way to work through them is like, wait a minute, I've been at peace, I've been doing amazing, and suddenly something really activated my energy. And you're always using your guidance system of your energy, of how you're feeling within. And then you say, wait, something took me out of my peace. What was that, and why was that? And that's when you start working for it. But you're not actively, I need to get healed, because when you're soul, you're perfect. And if you're aligned with soul, you don't think that there's anything wrong with you. You know that you're perfect.
Yes. And that's why it's a shift, right? It's a shift in consciousness where you wake up one day and you're more at peace and you can see the same trigger, but you're not touchable anymore because you've been neutral, you've been conscious, you've been aware, you've been present in all of your surroundings. So don't seek and like beg for these triggers to be worked on each time. If they're present and you can watch them. Don't stuff them down, right? Just like the experience of that spiritual leader that said, hey, don't be swimming with a whole bunch of bugs because you're trying to avoid them, but don't be digging them up when you are naturally soul. So the answer is to follow your intuition, your inner guidance system that's guiding you and bringing you to the deepest depths of your soul, to where it's going to show you those hard stuff right now because it wants you to get deep, or it allows you to just be present in it. Hey, that's mine. I'm soul. And you're back. You're back. You're not stuffing it down. You're giving it neutrality and you're giving it presence and peace. And sometimes just doing that requires a little bit more inner work because it didn't work. You're back in it again. You're back in it again. And that's when you realize, I can't stuff this one down because I don't want to have to swim with a whole bunch of cockroaches in my bath because I'm not being present with the triggers. I want to be present with each one consciously, and I want to be present with them when I'm conscious. That's what we're really saying. That's what we're asking. We're asking, when is the best time to deal with these things? And it's up to you as the conscious one. You are conscious. It isn't up to the mind. It isn't up to the body. It's up to you as the conscious one that recognizes, I am soul. These thoughts and emotions are not me. I'm going to be present. I'm going to align with soul. And the deeper the alignment becomes, the higher your consciousness becomes. And the triggers and things that used to affect you will not anymore. And those really, really heavy, big stuff can also be watched. And you will continue to ascend. You will continue to align with soul. You will continue to get deeper in soul, the more conscious you are. And the more conscious you are in deciding to be conscious with your thoughts, conscious with your emotions, and conscious with your triggers. Consciousness is the answer. Be more conscious. Be conscious in every experience. When there is a trigger, be conscious. When there is a thought that puts you in mind, be conscious. When you say, that is mine, I'm soul, that's consciousness. When you're present with the thoughts, when you're present with the triggers, that is consciousness. And it's enough. Being conscious is enough. You being conscious is feeding your consciousness. You being conscious allows you to be the conscious one. And the triggers, the mind energies, all of those things will go away. And they will not hit you as hard. You will sit one day and listen to the same song. That one doesn't impact me anymore. I wonder why. And you didn't get deep in it. It just naturally went away because you're now raising your scales of consciousness to a higher scale of soul. This stuff makes my heart open, and I reach like a higher state of consciousness before we even recorded this video. This question allowed us to get there, love. So we want you to know you are doing so beautifully getting deeper in soul when you can ask such deep questions that just allows you to have more inquiry from within. So great job. We love you guys so much. We hope you have an amazing day. Bye, love.
Bye, love.